4 miles off the coast of Maine, completely cut off from the mainland, sits a narrow spit of rock known as Kestrel Point. In October 1975, the Coast Guard resupply vessel arrived for its scheduled 3-week check-in. The crew pulled up to the dock and found the station entirely abandoned. Inside, the living quarters were orderly. A half-finished cup of coffee sat on the kitchen table, completely cold. Outside, the temperamental fog machinery, which required daily manual servicing, was running perfectly. The responding officers found the maintenance logbook sitting open on a workbench. The final entry was signed by the keeper and time-stamped that exact same morning, at 6:52 a.m. With the station's only boat still fueled at the dock and no signs of a struggle, the official record describes a man who simply ceased to be present during a 6-hour window of calm, clear weather. The missing keeper was 44-year-old Warren Voss. He was a former Navy machinist, a practical, disciplined man who understood equipment and routine. Following the death of his wife, Voss had specifically requested this isolated post. He valued quiet and kept meticulous, clinical records of his daily tasks, viewing 4 years of solitude as a reward for a life of loud engine rooms. The Coast Guard officially classified the disappearance as a presumed fall into the sea. However, a second, personal logbook recovered from the station provides a detailed timeline that the official report was forced to describe in strictly clinical terms. Voss was a man of mechanical facts, a professional observer trained to document rather than speculate. And when someone with that exact psychological profile begins recording the impossible, the details carry a specific heavy weight. The shift began in early September 1975. During a routine overnight watch, Voss recorded a single point of light appearing roughly 2 miles offshore at highly irregular intervals. His naval background made the light's behavior immediately unsettling. He noted it remained stationary for long stretches before moving at speeds inconsistent with any known vessel. It produced no engine noise, threw no wake, and appeared to generate illumination from within itself. He followed protocol and reported the sighting over the radio. The Coast Guard dismissed it as atmospheric refraction or an unregistered small craft, an explanation Voss initially recorded as a likely resolution to the matter. By late September, that rational framework began to fail. The light returned, and Voss found himself struggling to reconcile his professional expertise with a phenomenon that defied every standard rule of maritime navigation. The light began physically closing the distance to the station. Voss observed that it appeared to be built to resemble a vessel only from a distance, becoming less identifiable as it drew nearer. Across the first week of October, the handwriting in his daily entries grows progressively less steady, serving as a silent barometer for his mounting unease. Desperate to identify the hazard, Voss took the station's small auxiliary boat and rowed out into the dark water to confront the anomaly directly. He turned back before reaching the source, overtaken by a visceral sensation he compared to the particular wrongness of approaching a person you know well enough to recognize is no longer entirely themselves. The anomaly was no longer a passive navigational hazard. Voss was documenting a presence that appeared to be actively testing the limits of its own camouflage. Voss's final weeks were defined by this shrinking distance. The entity appeared nightly, eventually holding position directly off the point to stare back into the station's lamp room for extended periods. The logbook's final entry described the entity holding its position for 40 minutes before withdrawing at first light. Voss wrote that he no longer believed the light was interested in the station. He suspected it was waiting to confirm that he was far enough from the mainland that his absence would go temporarily unnoticed. The very isolation Voss once viewed as a reward had stripped away any witnesses to whatever occurred after that final time-stamped entry. Within 6 months, the Coast Guard officially closed the case and automated the station, a decision attributed to routine budget priorities that nonetheless accelerated immediately following the incident. 2 weeks after the search concluded, Voss's daughter Helen received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, printed using the type of home darkroom equipment her father kept at the station. The image shows Kestrel Point at night. The station's own lamp is clearly visible, but in the lower portion of the frame, positioned in the water, is a second source of illumination that does not resolve into any identifiable vessel. The image offers a second, independent record of the same light Voss spent 6 weeks documenting. a physical artifact that exists outside the private pages of his logbook. Helen Voss returned to the automated Kestrel point once in 1998. She stood at the point where her father's boat had been moored, looking out over calm water on an unremarkable overcast afternoon. She described experiencing an overwhelming and specific certainty that she was being observed from somewhere past the point where the water deepened, a sensation strong enough that she insisted on ending the visit hours ahead of schedule. Warren Voss spent his life as a machinist and a keeper, a man whose value system was built on disciplined observation. His logbook stands as the only record of what happens when that discipline meets something that refuses to be measured, leaving behind a light that continues to shine over an empty station.